Writers find inspiration for their work from some very interesting places. Sometimes it happens while on vacation. Other times, something in the news or in the media catches our attention and it inspires us to write. For other writers, it comes from a personal experience from the darkest depths of a past that we would rather keep hidden from the world. Hi, I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and for the final Author Awareness August interview of 2021, I'm interviewing award-winning writer Jordan P. Barnes about his work, One Hit Away. Hey, happy Saturday, everybody. I hope that your weekend is off to a spectacular start. Today is a bittersweet day because not only are we wrapping up Author Awareness August 2021, this is the Season 3 finale. But in just one short month, I will be back with Season 4, and we are going to launch into a set of new content that's just going to be absolutely freaking fantastic. So I've got a couple of really big announcements. First, if you want to become a channel supporter, there are a few great ways for you to do that. You can be a channel supporter on Patreon. You can pick up some sweet merch from my store on Teespring, and there's a couple of giveaways that I'm doing. I'll give you more details about Patreon and the merch store later in the video, but I want to talk to you about the giveaways. The first giveaway is one that I've been promoting for quite some time now, for several months in fact. I'm giving away this autograph poster featuring the cover art from all four of my books in the Archives of a Synchran Fantasy series. The registration link is listed down in the video description, and it is free to sign up. I'll be announcing the winner when I hit 200 YouTube subscribers. The second giveaway is for new patrons on Patreon. The first 20 new channel supporters on Patreon will receive a unique promo code that can be redeemed on audible.com for a free download of my audiobook, The Lover, the Fighter, and the Philosopher. You can subscribe for a minimum of $1 a month and still get that promo code. So announcement number 2, I'm doing 3 major calls for authors. I need some involvement for Season 4, and I need you guys to help me out. The first call is for authors that I've already interviewed between Seasons 1, 2, and 3 to come back onto the show and provide their top 10 book recommendations from their personal library. I've already got October covered, and I'll be covering the audiobook recommendations in July, but I need content for November, December, January, February, March, April, May, and June. The second call is for new authors. If you are an author that I have just connected with, or if you're an author that I've been connected with for a while and you're just now putting out your first book, I would love to invite you to be interviewed for Author Awareness during Season 4. If you are an author that has already been on the show and you're releasing something new that you would like to promote and would like to do a follow-up, I'd also like to extend that invitation to you as well. I've had some really great bites from authors that I've connected with, and right now, the only open slot that's available is for the month of July. It's going to be a first-come, first-served situation, so contact me through DM on Instagram or Twitter as soon as possible. The third and final invitation is for Creators Corner. I need authors that I've interviewed between Seasons 1 through 3 to return to the show and help me create writing tips that are going to be focused on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. I love collaborating with my fellow authors, and this is one of those moments that I think would be absolutely fantastic to do so. Again, if you're interested in doing this, please make sure to send me a direct message through social media. One final note, just like I did with the start of Season 3, the Season 2 playlist is going to drop off YouTube once Season 4 launches. The individual segments will still be found in their playlists, like the Top 10s, Author Awareness, Creator's Corner, and Forming Fantasy, but the Season 2 playlist itself will not be available come October. I am contemplating making those episodes available for download on Teespring, but I'm still looking at the logistics of doing so, but I'll keep you guys posted on updates. Before going any further with the video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications on new videos. You can select notifications for all videos, or you can select notifications based on your preferences. If you're watching on your phone, be sure to update those settings inside the app itself to get the most out of your viewing experience. So I've been excited to interview Jordan for quite some time. I have followed the progress of his book and his personal accounts of what he has worked through for quite a while through social media, and it is inspiring. Listening to some of the content that he has posted on Instagram has brought back some of my own personal memories because I have had close relatives who struggled with addiction and substance abuse in the past. To see Jordan's success story and testimony be available is pretty fantastic. So without any further ado, let's get into this final interview. Hey Jordan, thanks for joining me. Tell me about your books.
Aloha, Garrett. Thank you so much for the introduction and for featuring me in August Author Awareness Month. Yes, my name is Jordan Barnes, and it's actually fortuitous that this is being released today because tomorrow, August 29th of 2021, I make a decade clean off all mind and mood altering substances. So I am an addict in recovery. I'm many things, but first and foremost, that's how I identify and think of myself. That's what makes me that's basically what makes me who I am today. And because of that, I find that sharing my experience, strength, and hope through writing is very rewarding because it's a way to give back to others. And so that's what I do. I write Quit Lit. I write basically addiction and recovery based stories in the genres adult, and then going into Quit Lit, nonfiction, memoir, and I'm actually working on a new book. It's an autofiction book, which is really exciting. It's my first novel. It's my second book, but my first novel, and it's based off some of my experiences, but it is a fictional story, and I'm really excited to share that. That's called Bridgetown, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it quite yet, but I love the story. I love where it's going, and I've actually grown quite a bit throughout the process. So that's basically a bit about me. I live in Hawaii. I'm from Hawaii. I went to Oregon for college back in 2003. I got into a lot of trouble, and I ended up coming back here, which is ultimately where I got clean and sober. I went to a 2-year long-term inpatient treatment program, and then from there ended up staying in Hawaii. And so I live here with my wife. I have an 8-month-old kid who's sleeping right now. I'm doing the stay-at-home dad thing / writing. It's probably the best job I think any person could ask for, and I really love it. And it's just very rewarding and fulfilling.
So how did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or is this a recently discovered passion?
So I don't think I'm like a lot of authors. It's not something I always aspired to be. It's not something I ever thought about, really. I've always loved reading, and ever since I was a kid, I read a lot. It's funny, I tell people my parents were, they were pretty smart. They told us as children, I have 2 older brothers, that we could stay up past our bedtime for a half hour as long as we were reading. And so that's what I did, and I thought that I was, getting up on them, and it turned out that they were... Anyway, so I've always loved reading, and I have 2 older brothers, and they both also always loved reading as well. But for me, when I got sober, I went to work with my family business, and it was an awning company here in Hawaii. And it's a great little family business. There's like 20-something employees, and I worked there for 8-9 years. But I always knew that I wanted to do something more. I wanted to kind of be like in control of my future, and I didn't really want to stay on that path. That's a whole nother story altogether. But a couple years ago, I asked myself, what can I do to really branch out? Like, what am I good at? I have a lot of skills. I grew up in a manufacturing household. I've got access to a lot of stuff. I've always been a creative maker. And so I just started exploring hobbies like I think a lot of people in recovery do. And ultimately, I wanted to try my hand at writing. And the thing is, before I wrote my memoir, One Hit Away, a memoir of recovery, I actually sat down to write a nonfiction how-to book, sort of a lessons learned on recovery or from someone coming up on a decade clean. And as I wrote that, I realized really quick that I'm not a counselor, I don't have a CSAC, I'm not a professional, I'm not a doctor. And so I decided, after a wonderful conversation with a friend, that I would share my story and let my truths ring out. And that's what I did. And when I wrote One Hit Away, I was blown away by the response. It definitely was something I had apprehensions about because it's so intimate and published under my real name. I shared mugshots, crimes, a lot of things that I was going to take to the grave. And through that process, it was really healing. So that was one rewarding factor. But really what did it for me was the response from mothers and fathers and people that love somebody who struggles with substance use disorder. And when I started getting reviews and emails, not so much fan mail, but people reaching out to me, it really made me understand and comprehend the power of story and how far story can travel. And when I recognized that and I saw that I could make an impact, a positive impact, I could turn a negative event into a positive impact, that's when I just went in, jumped into whatever the cliche is with both feet. And I haven't looked back since. I left my job and I'm writing full time, and it's been the most rewarding decision I think I ever could have made.
What have been some of your inspirations as a writer, and what have been some of the obstacles you faced in the creative process?
So the hardest part really was learning the craft. I mean, I know my story, and I think I'm a good storyteller inherently, but it was learning how to communicate that effectively so that readers could consume it and then connect with it. And so it was a long road. I'm not self-taught. I went through a bunch of YouTube channels. I read a bunch of books, a lot of craft books. I asked a lot of questions. I was receptive to feedback, and I evolved and I learned. And it's crazy that my first book won Best Book of the Year, but ultimately I think there's two things to be said with that. One, I was really raw, honest, and open, and I didn't make it salacious about drug use. That was my intent from the beginning. And then two, because of the pandemic and so many people struggling with addiction, I think that it's sadly fortuitous that a lot of people were looking for a book about recovery. And I think that that's not something that people can plan. It's definitely not something I could plan, nor would I wish on anyone. It's just one of those things, and it just was out there at the right time. And I think that's why it's been well received as it has, which has been very humbling and very, very nice. That's one thing. The other thing is that I think that I wasn't aware of how much time and how much I would be consumed by a project of that magnitude. I've never really written anything, right? I've done a bunch of poetry and freestyles and raps and songs, but I've never really sat down and made one big project like a book. And then when I got into like the quality I wanted from it, I had no idea how many revisions it would take to get to the point where I was happy with it. And I think I went through like 40 revisions or something. It's just crazy. I mean, but I also, I wrote with a different POV when I first started. So just everything was evolving. This next book, the one I'm working on now, Bridgetown, a harm reduction novel, has been much more easygoing. I pumped out the first draft within 6 months, and I'm really happy with it so far. I think it's my first foray into fiction, but I really like fiction. I will say I always thought that nonfiction was so difficult because you're bound to reality. I couldn't wait to get into fiction because I could let my mind go free, and that wasn't the case for me. It turned out to be much more difficult. I didn't have a roadmap. I'm not good at outlining. I'm much more of a pantser, and I thought that I would just come up with whatever I wanted, and the problem was I came up with too many. I just had too many ideas, and to try and constrict that down to a story that made sense and then made a difference was ultimately my goal. And so that was difficult, but with all that said, I love it. I love the challenge. To me, writing is like chess. Like, it's trying to figure out strategically where you're going, where you're taking people. I love that. It's like a big puzzle, and I've always been, inspired to try challenging things. So I'm not complaining if that's how it sounds.
If you could give any advice to other would-be authors out there, what would you say to them?
If someone wanted my advice, I would say that what I struggled with for a long time was understanding who my audience was. I knew I wanted to tell my story about addiction. I initially thought that I wanted to tell my story to other people that were struggling with substance use disorder. And ultimately, I realized that my actual audience was not people like me. It was people that loved people like me. And when I realized that the mothers and the fathers and the sisters and the wives out there could really use a story of hope, because ultimately my story is not about me. It's about my parents coming to rescue me from the depths of hell. So it's their story. I'm there, but it's not only about me. And when I realized that, and I finally understood who my audience was, that really opened it up for me, and it also allowed me to connect with people in a different way than if I was writing to people struggling with addiction alone. Now, there's a lot of stuff in One Hit Away, for example, that is useful to someone who's going through addiction. I went through a 2-year long-term inpatient treatment program. That's something not a lot of people go through. And I learned a lot in there, and I took notes every day. And so there's a lot to be gained from someone, but ultimately knowing your audience it's really important, because if you want to connect with your audience, you need to know who you're connecting with. I would also say to be receptive to feedback. I know I don't know everything. I've always known that. I make a lot of mistakes. I make more mistakes than most people, and that's okay. And learning from your mistakes and growing is all part of my ethos as someone in recovery. I'm always talking about moving forward or turning a negative into a positive. If we're not growing, what are we doing here? That sort of thing. So I would just keep that in mind. I would say it's okay to get out there, make mistakes, take people's feedback. Don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's ultimately about your story. And then the last thing I would say, which has been the most useful thing to me as an author, is Clubhouse. The writing community on Clubhouse is insane. The writing sprints, the different groups like the author conference, author arenas. There's so many wonderful authors out there that are so willing to share really important information, a lot of it learned the hard way with you, that it's really like going to school. So if you're looking to start up, I would say get an invite to Clubhouse and just suit up and show up and ask questions and be around. You'll meet some amazingly talented authors. You'll meet everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to new authors to authors in between. Not that I'm in between. I'm definitely a beginner. But I would say get out there, and don't be an ass, and just take what you can and leave the rest. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share. I really appreciate it. Congratulations to all the other authors, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Aloha.
A big thank you goes out to Jordan P. Barnes for his participation in this final Author Awareness August interview. Now, if you're interested in connecting with him on social media, all of those links are listed down in the video description. And if you're interested in picking up copies of his books, you will find those links down there as well. It's always important to support our local authors as much as we can, because they are a part of our community. If you have the opportunity to shop local and to support local, please do so. Hey, you made it to the end of the season, and that is pretty fantastic. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because that is how this channel is going to be able to grow its viewership. If you're able to do so, please consider becoming a channel supporter by heading on over to patreon.com/GKJ Publishing, where you will have access to 4 support tiers of $1, $3, $5, and $20. Each level comes with unique perks and rewards, and the first 20 new patrons will receive a unique promo code redeemable on Audible for a free download of my poetry audiobook. Make sure to hit up the merchandise store on Teespring, where you can find comfy t-shirts and other products featuring the cover art from my books. You can also connect with me on Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing, and you can easily rep an item that you've purchased from the merch store by tagging me and using the hashtag 5kingdomsmerch. I'd love to feature one of your picks in a future video. That's it for me. I'm going to be taking a well-deserved break for the next month, but don't worry, Season 4 kicks off at the beginning of October. Thanks for watching. The vlog of the Five Kingdoms is filmed without the use of a live audience at Skyrocket Studios in Hanford, California. We can't do what we do without your help, so please make sure to subscribe by clicking the button that's above my head, and make sure to watch and share the videos over here to my left. Have a great week.